Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sally and this is my channel Secret Life of a Seamstress, where I talk all about sewing and making clothes and sometimes other crafts like knitting and crochet as well. Thank you so much for joining me today and I hope you're all doing really well. So today's video is going to be all about my 5 handmade essentials. So the 5 handmade essentials hashtag was actually started by Sarah over at Knotty Gnome, and I was kindly tagged recently by the lovely Amelia at So Amelia. Both of these lovely ladies have YouTube channels and I'm sure you probably already follow them, but if you don't, then I will tag their YouTube channels down below so that you can pop over and have a look. So the idea of the hashtag challenge really is that we have a little think about the 5 essential sewing patterns to us that we really couldn't be without. And the categories included for the challenge are essential top, essential bottoms, I hope I remember this right, essential one piece, essential layering piece, and essential wildcard. So I've had a little think over the last couple of weeks about the sewing patterns that I use time and again and that I really feel as though I couldn't live without. And I'm really looking forward to sharing them with you today. So I was a little bit worried about taking part in this challenge because I do feel sometimes as though I do talk about the patterns that I love a lot. So some of these patterns will be patterns that I've mentioned before. But in today's video, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the actual patterns, the designs of the garments, why I love them, and exactly why they are essential to me. So I really hope that you'll stick around and that you'll enjoy today's video. So in no particular order, I'm going to start with my essential top sewing pattern for summer. And the pattern that I've chosen to include today is this one. So this is the Agnes top by Tilly and the Buttons. So this is a pattern that's been around forever, really, hasn't it? I feel as though it's been around for years and years. So if you've not seen the Agnes pattern, which I'm sure you must have if you are a sewist, it's a very popular t-shirt pattern and you can make it with a few different options. So the sort of basic style of this top is a wide scoop neck. You can make it with plain sleeves. It's quite a fitted t-shirt, so it does kind of come in a little bit at the waist. It's very kind of clingy, I guess, and you can wear it underneath things. It looks really good underneath things. Yeah, you've got the scoop neck top version. You can make that with plain, long or short sleeves. You can also make this ruche sleeved version, which is really nice. It's got a sort of almost elbow length sleeve, this one. And then you can also make it with a kind of sweetheart style neckline with an elasticated bit of ruching at the bust as well. So there's a few different options that you can make with this sewing pattern. So I remember about 4 or 5 years ago now when I'd just kind of come back to sewing and was starting to post things on Instagram and follow other sewists on Instagram and things like that. It felt as though the Agnes top was absolutely everywhere. Everyone was making one and everyone was hacking it into a dress and wearing it under dungarees and Cleo dresses and things like that. And I thought I really need to have a go at that pattern. But if I'm honest, I wasn't actually sure about this style because it is quite a fitted, clingy top. It's not necessarily the kind of top that I would have gone for at that time. So nonetheless, I followed the sewing trend and I brought myself a copy of the Agnes pattern. I had a go at it. I made the ruche sleeve. Actually, I made the exact version that's on the front here from a different kind of stripy fabric. It was a viscose jersey actually rather than a cotton jersey, but I had a go at the ruche sleeves and I made the wide scoop neck version. If I can find a picture, then I'll pop it in here so that you can see it. I was really proud of myself actually that I managed to make this top. It was one of the earlier sort of jersey makes that I made in my sewing journey. So once it was done and I'd done the neckline and everything, I was really pleased with it. But I never really actually wore it. And the reason for that was indeed because it was quite clingy and I just didn't really feel comfortable in it. So if I'm honest, this pattern has actually sat in my stash for quite a long time and I've only just recently revisited it. And that is because I think my style has kind of changed and I've learned a little bit more about how to wear things and what I feel comfortable in. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in the video when I come on to some of my other patterns. But yeah, recently I've really been coming back to this pattern. What I love about it the most is actually the wide scoop neck on it. So I really struggled to find a t-shirt neckline that I really enjoy wearing. I don't like anything that's too low cut, and I also don't like anything that's too high necked. So I do find it quite hard to find a kind of in between. And I feel as though the Agnes neckline is really nice on me. I really do enjoy wearing the Agnes neckline. It just feels right. And not only that, it's really easy to sew. I've never really had a problem with inserting the Agnes neckline, and I think the reason for that is actually because it's so wide that you get a really good sort of press with it. Once it's in, you can really give it a good press, and because there is quite a lot of space in it, it just presses and sews really nicely. So yeah, for that reason, and in my recent search for the perfect t-shirt pattern, I decided to have another go at the Agnes top. And because I do love the neckline on this one so much, I decided to try and make it work for me in other ways. So I recently tried a hack, or a slight hack, very slight hack actually, of this pattern, to take out the shaping in the waist of the Agnes. So I made a white version of this from a viscose jersey, or it might have been a bamboo jersey actually. It was a really nice drapey jersey anyway. And I simply took out the shaping in the bodice pieces of the Agnes and just cut it straight. And that worked really well. And again, I'm going to say it again because I love the neckline so much. It worked really well as a t-shirt that I felt comfortable in. And I was so pleased that I'd managed to sort of make that really slight hack and make the t-shirt work for me, that I decided to come back to this pattern, have a think about it, and think about other ways I could make it work in my wardrobe. So I've recently made a few other versions of the Agnes in different fabrics. I've made two versions recently from a lovely pointelle jersey. For these two versions, I did actually make them fitted, and the reason for that was actually because I wanted to mainly wear them layered underneath things. So I do have in my wardrobe now quite a few layering pieces, and I'm going to be talking a bit about that later in the video, as I've just said. And more recently, I've made a version from a ribbed fabric, which I haven't shown yet. And I've actually made another slight alteration on that version as well, and this pattern now works even better for me. And I will be sharing a little bit more about the changes that I've made to that version in my next makes video, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, I really feel as though this t-shirt is one that I could not be without now. I absolutely love it. I don't think I'd actually make the ruche sleeve version again. Another reason why I didn't really wear my ruche sleeve version in the earlier days was because, as I mentioned, I didn't really like the tight fittingness of it, and I couldn't really wear it underneath anything because of these sleeves. They just felt too bulky and uncomfortable. But yeah, the Agnes pattern now is actually a pattern that I could not be without, and I love it. And that's why I needed to include it as my essential top pattern. So on to my essential sewing pattern for bottoms now, and I wonder if you can guess what it's going to be. So if you haven't already guessed by now, my essential sewing pattern for bottoms for summer has to be the Sapphire Trousers by Tilly and the Buttons. So if you're thinking, oh my goodness, she's going to start talking about the Sapphire Trousers again, please just hear me out. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why they are my favourites and why I love them so much and how I use them in my wardrobe. So anyway, if you haven't already seen the Sapphire Trousers by Tilly and the Buttons, it's from this wonderful book by Tilly. I have all three of Tilly's books. Is there three? Not four. I think there's three. I have all of them anyway, and this is by far the book that I use the most. It's called Make It Simple, and there are loads of amazing sewing patterns in here. What I love most of all about the patterns in this book is actually that they're just so hackable, and they're so interchangeable, and they're so exactly what it says on the tin, on the book. They're simple and they're really quick and easy to make. So the Sapphire Trousers, if you've not seen them before, they are a really quick and easy sew, a lovely elasticated waist, a pair of wide leg trousers. So these are the line drawings. I'll try and pop them in on the screen as well. So they are elasticated at the waist, but what I really like about the Sapphires is that they have this flat front. So I do find sometimes that elasticated waists can be a little bit bulky around your middle, and I know that not everyone feels comfortable in an elasticated waist like that. It can sometimes sort of add more to an area that you don't necessarily want to emphasize. But I do feel as though if you have a flat front on an elasticated garment, it just makes it that little bit more flattering, and it looks a little bit more dressy, I guess. So yeah, they have this lovely flat front here, and they just sort of flare out into quite a wide leg, not too wide, but just wide enough. You can make them from loads of different fabrics. I've mainly used viscose to make mine. I've recently used a chambray as well, but I know that lots of people have used cottons, cotton gauzes, and things like that, and they also look really nice. I think what you need to remember about the fabrics that you're going to be using for the sapphires is that if you are using something with drape, then they're going to hang really nicely and they're not going to have that much of a defined wide leg shape. But if you use something with more structure, like a cotton or a chambray or a gauze or something, then you will get more of that sort of A-line wide leg look. I've made, I think, 3 or 4 versions of the sapphires just as they are, but for all 3 of my versions, I've actually cut them to culotte length. And I find that length is more flattering on me, being quite short and petite. But also I just find it really cool and comfortable and really summery to wear as well. So I'll often just put a pair of sapphires on with a t-shirt or a vest or even a cami top or something like that, and it's just such a comfortable look and something to wear for summer. I suffer a lot in the summertime sometimes with something called polymorphic light syndrome or something, I think it's called. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's something that brings me out in quite a horrible rash on my legs. So I often need to cover up my legs, and I feel like these are just so nice to wear. They look really nice, and you could just make thousands of them in different fabrics and they would all look different. So those are my sort of standard versions of the sapphires, but I've also used the sapphire pattern to make jumpsuits as well. So one of the jumpsuits that I've made using the sapphire trousers pattern is actually what I'm wearing today. So I really love the sapphire trousers as a kind of basic trouser pattern, and they are great for hacking into jumpsuits as well because they do have that sort of high elasticated waist. So in the Make It Simple book as well, there is a pattern using the sapphire trousers for a jumpsuit. It's called the sapphire jumpsuit, funnily enough. And I have made that jumpsuit as it is, but that jumpsuit actually gave me the idea of actually maybe I could pair other bodices from dresses and things that I love with the sapphire trousers and have myself lots of different jumpsuits that I love. So the jumpsuit that I'm wearing today is actually a hack of the Tilly and the Buttons Lyra dress bodice. So this is the shirt style bodice. I've actually made this a little bit more relaxed in that the collar is not very well interfaced, so you can probably see that it's kind of hanging open. It is on a stand, so it should kind of stand up, but because I've used quite a floppy fabric and quite a floppy interfacing, it's kind of almost like a flat collar really, and I quite like that style as a jumpsuit. I didn't want it to feel too smart. So yeah, the Lyra is on the top half, and then I've paired it with the sapphires on the bottom, and instead of having an elasticated waist, I've actually just put 2 buttonholes in the middle here and threaded through a drawstring, and it works so well as a jumpsuit. So I've made this jumpsuit with the sapphires. I've also made a mashup of the sapphires and the chalk and notch wren pattern, and more recently a version of the sapphires and the Anthea blouse as a jumpsuit. So yeah, I just feel as though this pattern is just really versatile. I love it. It works so well for me for hacking. I think something that I would like to try is actually making a pair of shorts from the sapphires, because I've not done that yet. And I also need to make a pair of full length trousers as well, because I feel as though this summer I'm actually sort of favouring more of a full length leg rather than a culotte length. So it would be nice to have a couple of full leg length trousers, full leg length. That sounds weird. My Anthea jumpsuit hack that I did with the sapphires does actually at the moment have full length trousers. So I have tried lengthening them and they work really well as a full leg pair of trousers. Full leg length pair of trousers. So yeah, I do need to try that. I do feel as though the one thing that's missing from the sapphires actually is possibly pockets. So I may try adding some pockets into the sapphires in the future. I'm not quite sure how I'd go about that actually. I don't think I would just put in side seam pockets or inseam pockets, because I mainly use viscose for making these trousers. And I do feel as though sometimes if you put in an inseam pocket at the side of a viscose make, it can drag the whole thing down sometimes, or it can sort of misshape the lines of the garment. So what I would most prefer to do is actually put some sort of front pockets, the ones that are kind of flat and go into the waistband. So I need to have a think about that. But yeah, that's why I needed to include the sapphire trousers as my essential bottoms pattern, because it is just so versatile to me. It's really quick and easy to make. I know it fits well. I know I can whip up a pair in a couple of hours. And there are just so many different options with it. So if you haven't tried the sapphire trousers already, I urge you to go and try them. Next, we're on to my essential pattern for a one piece for summer. And the pattern that I've had to come back to for this category is the Darling Ranges dress by Megan Nielsen. So again, one that I talk about quite a lot on this channel, and you'll know if you've followed me for a while how much I've used this pattern. It has definitely had its money's worth in my pattern library, I can tell you. So the backstory of this pattern is when I started sewing again and I was getting into garment sewing, looking around at all the different patterns that were available, and I saw this pattern. It just came up in one of my searches, and at that time it was absolutely my style of dress. I was wearing much more shorter dresses at that time, about 5 or 6 years ago. And I've always loved a denim look dress, and I thought that is going to be my goal. That is the dress that I'm aiming to make. I really want to get my sewing skills up to the stage where I can make a dress like that. So I kind of worked on that and practiced, and I think I brought this pattern actually from one of the knitting and stitching shows, and it was quite an investment for me at that time. I think at the time this was about £17, and it felt like so much to spend out on a pattern. And when you're worried about whether or not you'll actually be able to make it and do it justice, it does feel like a big investment and a lot of money to splash out. Little did I know at the time how much I was going to use that pattern. So yeah, as I say, it's definitely had its money's worth. But yeah, if you haven't seen the Darling Ranges dress pattern, it's by Megan Nielsen. There are a few different versions that you can sew, but essentially it is a button-down shirt dress. So you can make it with a button-down V-neck bodice and a lovely gathered skirt. It buttons all the way through, and then it has these nice sort of 3/4 length elasticated sleeves. You can also make it as a blouse, just a nice plain V-neck blouse with short sleeves. Obviously you could lengthen the sleeves, or you could have the elasticated ones if you wanted to. And then there is the version on here that I've not yet sewn up, and I really need to, which is more of a sort of straight style shirt dress. It has the elbow length sleeves, I think. It does have pockets in as well, but it's just a nice sort of more of a shift style dress, I guess, that buttons all the way down. And yeah, I've not made that one yet, so I really need to give it a go. But yeah, this pattern I have made so many times. So around 5 or 6 years ago, when I was making this sort of style more and wearing it more, I made 2 or 3 different versions of this dress just as it is. With the sleeves. I also tried hacking it into a sleeveless version, which worked really well. I've made the standard blouse version. I've made a peplum blouse version. More recently, I've made a midi length version of this style and just lengthened down the skirt a little bit. What else have I made? And you'll know if you've been watching my videos recently that I've used this pattern again to make myself a dress to wear for a wedding, where I used the bodice of this Darling Ranges dress and hacked it together with a couple of my other favourite patterns, so the Lyra dress skirt and the frill from the Davenport dress by Friday Pattern Company. Yeah, this is a well-used pattern in my stash, and I genuinely do feel actually that I couldn't be without this pattern. And I think the reason for that is, again, similar to the Agnes, it has a neckline that I really like. So as I've mentioned, I don't like anything too low or anything too high. This V-neck is just perfect on me. It's just the right sort of height, I guess, that it's not too low. I love the neckline, and there are just so many parts of it that I really enjoy wearing and love the style of. So I think sometimes if you find a pattern like that that has elements to it that you really like, I think that's when you need to kind of hold on to it and use it for other things and think about how you can get the most out of it. So that's why the Darling Ranges dress had to be included in my 5 handmade essential sewing patterns. So let's move on then to my essential layering piece. So my essential layering piece pattern has actually got to be the Logan Shacket by Style Arc, another one that I talk about quite a lot. So anyway, layering piece for me had to be the Logan Shacket pattern. So if you've not seen it before, the Logan Shacket is a lovely shirt pattern by Style Arc. It's meant to be worn as a kind of, well, shacket really. I think I would say that it's more of a sort of outerwear style, and I know that when I originally bought this pattern I did buy it to wear as an outerwear shacket, but on making it I just found that it was just the perfect style of shirt for me. You can just make it in so many different fabrics and it feels different every time you make it. So this is quite an oversized pattern, quite an oversized shirt, because obviously it is meant to be worn as outerwear. When I originally made my first version of this pattern, I did size down, I think, and I also made some alterations as well. So I took quite a bit out of the length of the shirt. I think this is drafted for say 5'7" and 5'8", and I'm 5'3". So I needed to remove some of the length, and I also took out some of the size of the pockets as well. So I made them smaller to account for what I'd taken out of the length. I also shortened the sleeves slightly because I realised they were going to come up super long even though I was going to turn them up anyway. So I probably should have told you a little bit more about the style of this, sorry. So yeah, it is quite an oversized style, relaxed fit shirt. It does have a back yoke to it, 2 patch pockets on the front. It has a collar on a stand, so it is your sort of traditional style shirt. The button placket is made just by turning the fronts under, so there's no separate button placket. There are no sleeve cuffs, these are just sewn straight, and then you turn the sleeves up if you want to. So yeah, again, I've made a good 4 or 5 different versions of this pattern. I started with one that I wanted to wear as outerwear, and I made a 12 from a brushed cotton fabric, which worked really nicely. And that, I think, was when I realised how much I loved it just as a day-to-day shirt that you can wear inside. Because it just felt so comfortable to wear. It fitted me really well with the changes that I'd made, and I loved wearing it over things. So I'd wear it over t-shirts or cami tops or things like that. It is actually big enough on me to wear over a sweatshirt, not that I do that very often, but I could do if I wanted to. So that was my 12 version, and when I realised how much I loved the style of this, I then went on to make a version in more of a kind of wool fabric, which I do wear more as a shacket, so I'll wear that over things a bit more and wear it out. I've also got a denim look one made from a washed viscose linen, which I wear all the time. This is probably my most worn version actually, and I layer this, coming back to the essential layering, I layer this over cami tops and t-shirts and my Agnes t-shirts as well. So if I feel a little bit sort of self-conscious with my more fitted Agnes tops, I think wearing one of these shirts over the top, it just looks really nice and it feels really comfy and casual, and I just love that as a style to wear these days. I've also made a quilted version of the Logan Shacket, which is obviously a more of an outerwear one. So this was an experiment really. I really wanted to make a quilted jacket. I didn't necessarily want to buy myself a new pattern. I had this lovely quilted fabric from Minerva and a shirt pattern that I knew I already loved. So I decided to tweak the pattern slightly, take out the yoke, give it an actual button placket, because obviously turning under that quilted fabric wouldn't really have worked very well. So I made a button placket and just added in some Liberty fabrics for the shirts, what do you call it, like the under the stand of the collar and then the underneath of the shirt as well. And I absolutely love how that turned out, and I hope that that's a good example of how you can use a pattern that you love and just tweak it slightly to make it into something new. So I didn't have to go and buy another quilted jacket pattern to make a quilted jacket. I just used something that I already had. So I think for me, the Logan Shacket is just so good for wearing every single day. I don't wear it every single day, but I probably could if I wanted to. So it just works so well for so many different things. So I do tend to wear it in the ways I've already mentioned over in Agnes, with a pair of jeans or a cami top or something. They also look really nice just with leggings, because I think you've got that bit of length there. So if you're self-conscious about wearing some tight leggings, you don't really want to show your hips or, you know, waistline area in a pair of leggings, then it gives you quite a good bit of coverage. I also like wearing them over dresses sometimes as well. I also have two versions of the Logan that I want to make for summertime, and for my holiday I need to get on with those actually. So I'm going to make a white linen version that I can use as a beach or a pool cover up, and I think that will work really nicely. I'm going to lengthen it a little bit so that it just comes down a little bit lower and looks almost like a short shirt dress, and I think that will be really good for wearing around the pool over a swimsuit or whatever, and it'll be a nice bit of coverage and sun coverage as well. Another version that I want to make is actually a striped version with all the contrast stripes, and I have the fabric ready for that too. So yeah, I'm still working on different ways that I can use this Logan jacket pattern, and different ways that I can bring it into my wardrobe. So lastly then, I'm on to my wildcard, my essential wildcard sewing pattern, and this one was the hardest one for me to include actually, or to decide what I wanted to include, because there are quite a few lovely patterns that I've made up that I could have included for dresses and things, but they're not ones that I've used or come back to time and time again necessarily. I think they may be in the future when I've had more time to play around with them, but for now I didn't feel as though they were worthy of being included in this video. So the pattern that I've decided to include for my wildcard is actually the Ogden Cami by True Buyers. Another pattern that I've talked about a lot and that I make time and again, but it is just such a great basic pattern to have in your pattern stash. So I've made loads of versions of the Ogden Cami. I've been on quite a journey with it, I would say actually. Again, it was one that I brought quite early on in my sewing journey, probably because everyone else was making it, to be honest. And it was one of those, again, that I didn't know if I would feel comfortable wearing, because it's very low at the back and quite low at the front actually as well. I've actually adapted the pattern slightly to make it less low on me, and I'll tell you how in a minute. But yeah, it was one of those that everyone was making, and I just felt as though I should have a go at it. I don't tend to follow trends in that way so much anymore, but at the time, at the beginning of my sewing journey, I did feel as though, well, everyone's making this, I need to have a go at it. So I bought the pattern and made a few different versions of it in various different fabrics, from fabrics that I, if I'm honest, didn't really work for me, like cottons and cotton dobbies. I think I made one from like a peach skin fabric, which you don't hear of that much anymore, but they didn't really work for me very well. They felt quite tight and quite stiff and quite restrictive, so I kind of didn't really wear the Ogden camis that I'd made, and they went to the back of my wardrobe. Just did not really be worn. But I was glad that I had had a go at the pattern, and it is a good one for beginners as well. It's quite quick and easy to make and quite simple too. So that sat around for a while, and then, like my Agnes pattern actually, I kind of revisited it a couple of years ago when I realised how much I've been enjoying layering clothing. So I knit as well, and I have quite a few hand knitted cardigans. And what I was finding was that I didn't really have anything to wear underneath my cardigans or underneath the shirts that I had. Cue the Agnes and Ogden Cami patterns coming back into my life, because they're perfect layering pieces. And of course you can wear them on their own as well. So I haven't talked about the style of the Ogden Cami yet. So the Ogden Cami is a really simple cami top. It has quite thin straps. It has a V-neck at the front and then a lower V at the back, and quite a floaty sort of A-line fit, and it's lined with a kind of half lining inside. So it is a good one for beginners, as I say, and it's very quick and easy to sew, and you can make it from so many different fabrics depending on the kind of look that you want and what fabrics you feel comfortable wearing. So yeah, the Ogden Cami to me has been a really good one to have. I've made so many different versions now, and the fabric that I'm finding that I like most in the Ogden is a floaty viscose or a crepe or something like that, something that drapes and feels really swishy and nice when you're wearing it. You can tuck the Ogden in or you can have it out, and it just works really well both ways. I've also made a couple of hacks with the Ogden Cami as well. So a while ago now for one of my Minerva makes. I actually hacked the Ogden cami into a midi dress. And the way that I did that was just to cut the bodice of the Ogden cami. I may have just cut it up to the lining piece actually. And then I just simply added on a gathered skirt, which I made from a couple of rectangles. So it was a really simple dress hack to sew. I know loads of people have made dresses using the Ogden cami. You can of course just lengthen it down as it is to make a really nice slip dress, or you can use it as pajamas or a nightie or something like that, or you could add a couple of gathered tiers and have a really nice maxi dress. So it's a really good one for hacking around. I also have a lovely hacked version of the Ogden cami actually, which I made using a blog post from the True Bias website. And that hack was to give it a little button placket on the front with a really cute sort of peplum on the bottom, and I love that cami top. And yeah, it looks really nice underneath things like cardigans and things like that. And I love the fabric that I've used for that one too. So yeah, again, this has been a really well used pattern. And it's another one where I've had to find my own style with it really. Oh, I forgot to mention actually the hack that I've done on the Ogden cami just to bring it up a little bit. It's hardly even worthy of being called a hack actually, but what I do with my Ogden camis is just to shorten the strap slightly. So I've taken, I think, about 1.5 centimeters out of both of my strap pieces on the Ogden so that the straps are just that little bit shorter, and just doing that just brings the V up a bit so it's higher. So yeah, I think the Ogden cami is a great one. It's definitely one of my essential patterns that I couldn't be without. I use it all the time and again, but particularly recently I've had this pattern out and I've been making loads of different versions of it that I can wear underneath things like my Logans and my knitted garments. So I had to include the Ogden cami as well today. So that concludes my 5 handmade essentials, my essential sewing patterns for summer and beyond that I just couldn't be without. I hope this has been an interesting video, and even though they are patterns that I do talk about quite a lot, I hope there's been something a little bit new in there, something that you can take away from what I've shared today. So I've decided that I'm not actually going to tag 5 other sewing bloggers to take part in this challenge, and the reason for that is because I always feel as though I'm going to leave someone out. And I'm also coming into this challenge a little bit late, so it's possible that some of the people that I would tag have already been tagged. So I'm just going to say that if you are a sewing blogger and you would like to take part in this challenge, I will leave the hashtag down below and Naughty Gnome's YouTube channel as well, so that you can pop over and have a look at her video and Sew Amelia's as well. Just see what it's all about and see whether you would like to make your own 5 handmade essentials video, because we'd all love to watch, I'm sure. You let me know in the comments below what your handmade essentials sewing patterns are. I'd love to know one pattern. Comment one pattern below, the pattern that you couldn't be without. I'd love to know. It's always really interesting to me to see the patterns that people come back to time and again. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love you to consider subscribing. I do post regularly every Sunday morning at 8 AM with lots of sewing content. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give it a like as well. Otherwise, take care everyone, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.